Hello everyone, it is Tsuki, and today we're going to be talking about the changes to healers coming out of the Shadowbringers North America media tour that happened quite a while ago. You might be thinking, why are you covering this now instead of like when it first came out? And the reason for that is because I am lazy, and also I was really busy kind of figuring out the whole streaming thing, which has been a lot of fun. But there's still some people who are kind of asking me questions about this during the streams, and had a person in particular comment asking for this video to be made, and I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna get up and just make this video while I have some time today. So that's what we're doing. We're only gonna be talking about the 3 healer changes. If we talked about every single job, this video would be like 5 hours long. I'm not even joking. I tried to make a video when this first came out on all of the jobs, and I got through White Mage and Scholar, and it was like 50 minutes long. So expect this to be still a very lengthy video, even though we're only talking about the 3 healers. But without further ado, let's just kind of jump into this, bearing in mind that there's probably a good chance that some of these will be changing when we get to early access. So just kind of bear that in mind, that this was a build that they made back in April, I believe. So there's a good chance that with some of the feedback they got whilst kind of giving this to the people who went to the media tour, and from the community as well, once they lifted the embargo, that they're going to be tweaking a lot of this stuff for all the jobs and not just healers. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go along. So we're going to start off with White Mage first, because I feel like White Mage is kind of the easiest to touch up on, because White Mage kind of is very similar to how it is in Stormblood. But yeah, I feel like despite like losing DPS capabilities like all the other healers, White Mage has mostly remained the same, just got a bunch of extra stuff added on top of that. Maybe a little bit too much stuff, and trust me, we'll talk about that. So the first thing we're actually going to talk about is probably the role actions, and this will be affecting all healers. So yeah, let's take a look at this first. So there's quite a few omissions here. There's quite a few removals of some major abilities on the healers. Big one, Protect. Protect is finally gone. Thank goodness. I hate Protect. It was very minor damage mitigation. It lasted long enough that you only had to cast it once if nothing went wrong, but if something did go wrong, it was just really annoying, because if somebody died, for instance, you'd have to spend a GCD raising them, and you almost were certainly burning your Swift cast, and then as soon as they were up, you'd probably want to cast Protect on them, so you're essentially burning 2 GCDs to get somebody back up into the fight. So yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Protect. Also, I'm pretty sure we've all been in those situations where you get into the instance for the first time, the barrier goes down, and then you just have that DPS or that tank or just party members who just start dipping forward. They don't wait for Protect, and it's just really annoying. Now that's not a problem anymore, because Protect is gone. It's now normalized. You don't have to worry about it anymore. I actually really like the removal of Protect for that reason. Cleric Stance is gone. I mean, Cleric Stance really didn't need to be in the game when they changed how healer DPS was going into Stormblood, and it really was just a very small damage buff for healers every now and then. Now it's gone. I'm not gonna miss it in particular. It was nice to have, but it's one less thing I have to pay attention and keep on my hotbar now. So I'm actually kind of more happy about the fact that I don't have to keep it on my hotbar than sad that I'm losing that small amount of damage every now and then. So not too sad to see Cleric Stance go. One thing that I am kind of upset to see go is Largesse. Now, Largesse being gone is something that happens because it seems like they're trying to build in the increased healing magic potency into job specific abilities on each of the healers. So I feel like that's what they're trying to do, but at the same time, I kind of just don't like that change. I kind of just like the fact that Largesse just having your healing buff be its own thing, because basically what they did was they added healing potency, or the increased healing magic potency, to other abilities that you have, and those already have their own effects without the healing magic potency. And it's like, well, maybe you don't need that extra effect that particular ability will give you as well. You just want the healing magic potency, right? And I kind of like the fact that Largesse would be its own thing, but yeah, I guess they're trying to build that into job specific abilities now, so that's a bit unfortunate. And We lost break. That's a big one. I know everyone loves to use break. Got to get that heavy on your enemies so that they can't catch up to you. So I'm really sorry to see break go. I know it's everyone's favorite ability or spell to use as a healer. You know, that 20 potency was just, it was too strong. So I can see why they got rid of it. Um, but yeah, this is what we have left. If I missed some other role action that we also had, then it's probably insignificant and doesn't really change healers that much to begin with. But in terms of what we have, I'd say Rescue, Swiftcast, Asuna are exactly the same. So if you liked using Rescue, then thumbs up. You still get to have it. I, if you hate Rescue because you've been pulled off the edge of primal fights like I have, then you can let out your collective groans all together now on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. God damn it, Rescue. But there's quite a few people who do like using Rescue, and it's helpful for them. So it's here again in Shadowbringers. Hooray! Swiftcast and Asuna are basically exactly the same as they have been before. Repose is exactly the same. The only difference is that instead of being a conjurer specific spell, it is now available to use for all healers. Sleeping isn't very helpful outside of maybe some solo content, but yeah, now all healers have access to a single target sleep spell if you need it. Surecast and Lucid Dreaming did have some changes though. Surecast, we got an additional second on Surecast's duration, but in turn had its recast quadrupled to 2 minutes. And this is probably in tandem with the change to Arm's Length for Disciples of War, which had its recast doubled to 2 minutes as well from 60 seconds. And yeah, we still get the spells can be cast without interruption, thankfully, on Surecast as well, which is nice. But it's kind of weird that they increased Surecast and Arm's Length recast time to 2 minutes. Because there's a ton, I don't know what it was about Stormblood, but there's a ton of bosses that would just knock back. There's a ton of bosses, ton of abilities that would just knock you back in Stormblood content. I don't know what it was about Stormblood, but they really liked being able to knock people back. So maybe this means that in Shadowbringers content, there's going to be a lot less knockbacks, or they're just saying, screw you, deal with it, and get knocked out of position, deal with it. So one of those two, I guess we'll have to wait and find out when we actually get our hands on Shadowbringers content. And Lucid Dreaming had its recast halved, actually, from 2 minutes down to 1 minute, which is, I want to say it's a pretty good change, but I don't actually know with the changes to Healer MP how impactful this actually is, because going into Shadowbringers, every single job's just going to have 10,000 MP now, which I'm not entirely sure how that factors into how Lucid is going to function. I'm pretty sure that it's not going to be giving you the same amount of MP as it does currently right now. There is a formula that you can use to figure out how much Lucid is going to give you, depending on what level you are. But yeah, again, we're gonna have to wait and see how much this means. Like 80 potency, 80 refresh potency doesn't actually like mean anything. This is, since MP is being normalized, this is like the one time they could say, hey, this is how much Lucid is gonna give you. And but no, we're still getting this refresh potency 80. So yeah, I don't know if the formula we have now is still going to be applicable in Shadowbringers to be able to calculate how much this is going to give you, but I'm assuming that Lucid being having half its recast cut down is going to be a positive across the board anyway. So thumbs up for us. And also, this is probably, I think this is actually the only source of MP you're going to have on Astrologians now with the changes to Astrologian cards, and we'll get to the Astrologian cards. Don't worry about that one. I'm not too happy about that. We're gonna jump over to traits real quick. There's really nothing to talk about here. The three major ones are something that we which would be Secret Lily, Heart of Solace, and the Enhanced Asylum are things we can talk about when we actually look at the abilities themselves. So we're just gonna jump into spells and abilities on White Mage. All right. White Mage. Now, like I kind of said already, I feel like White Mage, at its core, has pretty much remained very similar to how it is right now in Stormblood, with just the fact that it got some of its DPS cut down, but again, that happened to Scholar and Astrologian as well, and also it got a lot more healing stuff which is honestly too much healing stuff if I'm being honest. But let's give a bit more detail. So looking at single target here, Raise exactly the same. Cure and Cure 2 and Benediction and Tetragrammaton are pretty much exactly the same as well, I believe. Same potencies and everything. Still have the 15% chance to proc Cure 2 that doesn't cost any MP, which is nice. Regen and Divine Benison have changed though. Divine Benison, instead of being based on the target's max HP, is now just a 500 potency shield, which that's fine. Still lasts 15 seconds, still has a recast of 30 seconds. So yeah, that's fine. I guess just means that no matter who you're casting it on, whether you're casting it on your tank or you're casting it on a caster DPS, it's gonna have the same potency shield. So alright, that's fine. Regen actually got an interesting change. Had its cure potency increased. Actually, I believe the potency per tick is 150 right now, but it got increased, 33% increase in cure potency to 200 per tick, but it did lose 3 seconds of duration, so that's one less tick. But overall, it adds up to being a pretty sizable increase of healing throughout its entire duration. So yeah, I mean, kind of an interesting change. I feel like the fact that they're increasing the potency on regen is one of many factors. The other big factors being that there's just a massive amount of healing and increased healing capabilities on all of the healers across the board, that outgoing damage is going to be increased, but we really can't say for sure until we actually get into Shadowbringers. But yeah, this is an interesting change, and it also when we get to talking about Astrologian, it also kind of lines up with how Astrologian's nocturnal aspect event effect is acting as well. But yeah, that's not much really changed there. Aoe Healing. Alright, so I believe Medica, Cure 3, and Assize have thankfully changed, thankfully stayed the same. Assize, thankfully, still does damage. I was really thinking that they were going to get rid of, or at least nerf, Assize, because Assize is absolutely ridiculous. You still have the 400 potency cure, 400 potency attack with no damage drop off, and still gives you the 10% max MP, which is just 1000 MP every time you use it, and it still has the 45-second recast time as well. So Assize is still just as awesome as it is right now. So that's good to see. I'm glad that we still have that to feel good about in terms of DPS as a healer, because we won't have much else to feel good about when we talk about other DPS things. Asylum did get an interesting change here. And there's some interesting wording here that I want to kind of bring some light to. It still has the cure potency, still lasts 24 seconds, so that hasn't changed. The more interesting thing is that at level 78, you'll get a trait for Asylum that adds this effect, which increases HP recovery via healing actions on party members in the designated area. So if you're standing in it, then healing actions will be increased by 10%. Now, this is very interesting wording here, because it says via healing actions. Now, if you go look at largesse right now in game, or any ability basically that increases your healing potency, it will say increases healing magic potency. In fact, if we just scroll down and skip ahead real quick to look at Temperance, it will say right here, increases healing magic potency. And what that means is healing magic potency just means that it increases healing spells. But here, I think because it's purposely worded for healing actions, that it will also increase abilities, which means it will increase how much Asylum's doing, it will increase how much Assize does, Tetragrammaton, and it's not just specific to White Mage either. So like your healing partner, if you have a Scholar, that means their Lustrates, their Indoms, their Excogs, Astrologian has Essential Dignity. You know, there's a lot of healing abilities that could benefit from this 10% healing actions on Asylum. So that could just be just bad wording. You know, it could just be that it still just only affects healing spells, would be kind of weird, because you'd figure that Asylum having this effect would synergize with itself. You know, that'd be kind of weird if it just didn't. But yeah, I'm kind of fingers crossed hoping that this means that it increases healing ability potencies as well, since it says healing actions instead of just healing magic potency. But we'll have to wait and see. It's really hard to tell right now without being able to go in game and test it out. So yeah. And all right, let's move over to the Lily Gauge and the Blood Lilies, because yeah. All right, so as the Lily Gauge is now currently in Stormblood, you could literally turn it off and pretend like it doesn't exist, and just pretend like occasionally your abilities just occasionally have shorter cooldowns, and that's it, because you don't have to pay attention to your Lily Gauge at all right now as it is. So they've kind of changed it, so now you have to kind of pay attention to it just a little bit. Basically now every 30 seconds whilst you're in combat, you will gain a Lily, and you can use those lilies on one of two spells: a Flash of Solace or a Flash's Rapture. Flash of Solace is basically an instant cure, an instant cast cure 2, and a Flash's Rapture is basically an instant cast Medica. That these don't cost MP, but they will cost 1 lily. But every time you use a lily, it will nourish the Blood Lily, and using 3 normal lilies will fully nourish your Blood Lily, in which case you can then expend your Blood Lily on a Flash's Misery, which is basically just a big AoE damage attack with some damage drop off, very similar to like Flare or Foul, or one of those. So yeah, that's the Lily Gauge now for White Mage, and it's a little bit more interesting. It's not what White Mage needed, honestly. It really isn't. White Mage did not need this, okay? White Mage did not need more healing spells. White Mage has a ton of healing spells already. White Mage did not need this. It's just a missed opportunity to do something much more interesting with White Mage, I feel, which is why I'm kind of disappointed in this. I mean, it's helpful. Don't get me wrong. Having more damage is always nice, especially with the fact that we kind of got DPS spells kind of gutted across all the healers, so it's kind of nice to have something that still does damage as a White Mage. And I mean, the healing spells, we didn't really need them, but they're nice, I guess. I mean, it saves you some time and MP since they're instant cast and don't cost MP, I guess, but it's like you didn't really need them. So I don't know, I'm just disappointed in what could have been a much more interesting, like, what you could have done so much more interesting stuff with White Mage, but this is what we got. And it's more interesting than we have now, and it's probably more helpful than what we have now, honestly. I mean, as nice as it is to get your size cooling down a little bit faster, I mean, this overall this is probably just a lot more helpful, but it doesn't necessarily make it interesting, in my opinion. So disappointing just on the fact that it's not interesting, but it is still very helpful, even though it's not exactly needed. Hey, look, it's nice that alerts are working, I guess. I don't know what that is, but I'll check it out later. Alright, let's take a look at the DPS spells. And this is all we got. You got 5 upgrading versions of a single target attack, and then 3 upgraded versions of a single target dot. And that's it. That's all you got. Across well, and you have Holy Still, and this is across every single healer, by the way. Every single healer now just has access to 1 single target filler spell, 1 single target dot, and 1 AoE spell. That's it. That's all the healers got. Everything else that we kind of have now that isn't one of these things, it gets cut. So Arrow 3 unfortunately is gone. I'm gonna miss Arrow 3 because I really love the animation on Arrow 3. Kind of skipping ahead, but for Scholar, you lose a lot of stuff. You lose Miasma 2. I think you lose Miasma as well. You lose the access to Bane. So much stuff. We're kind of skipping ahead, but we'll talk about the Scholar stuff when we get to it. But yeah, there's really not much else to say other than the fact that Stone and Arrow get replaced with Glare and Dia once you get high enough level at level 72. So actually pretty quick into the expansion you get these upgraded DPS spells, which it'll be nice to see new animations at least, but it's not gonna feel that great because it's a little lackluster, your DPS rotation as a healer. But Holy got changed as well. It no longer has sort of the weird staggering damage drop off. It's now just a flat 140 potency to all nearby enemies. It still has the stun effect, thankfully, and actually only costs 600 MP, which is actually kind of low, I think, which is kind of weird because Holy has in the past just cost a lot of MP, but 600 MP cost out of 10,000 is kind of low in my opinion. You can get quite a bit of Holy casts, especially with White Mage and all the abilities that can regain and reduce your MP costs and all that. But there's really not much else to talk about in terms of DPS, so let's just kind of move on. Other than the fact that it's kind of disappointing that we lost a lot of DPS capabilities across all the healers. Fluid Aura is still in the game for some reason, because all it does now is bind for 6 seconds. It doesn't knock back anymore, which, I mean, you weren't using Fluid Aura that much anyway, but there were those occasions when, like, you had, like, a ranged attacking enemy, and you wanted to push them into the mobs with the rest of the mobs so that your party could AoE them down altogether. That was, like, the only reason to use Fluid Aura, but now that use is gone, so I'm not entirely sure why it's even still in the game. Because you could just have your ranged DPS bind if you needed a bind. But Fluid Aura is still there, and you probably don't even need to keep it on your bar. So that's nice. Presence of Mind, I'm pretty sure, is unchanged, I think. There might be a difference in recast time. I don't remember off the top of my head what Presence of Mind's recast time is currently, but same effect, same duration. Thin Air, again, pretty much exactly the same as it is now in Stormblood. Still 2-minute recast time, still 12 seconds, and still nullifies the cost of all MP. So that's nice to see that still in the game. And then we have Plenary Indulgence, which is kind of an interesting one because I kind of like how Plenary Indulgence functions in the game currently in Stormblood, but they decided to change that for some reason, and basically now Plenary Indulgence kind of acts as an AoE spell cooldown, essentially. So it grants confession to self and nearby party members upon receiving HP recovery via Medica 2, or Cure 3. So this will last for 10 seconds. It only has a 1-minute cooldown. And essentially, what I'm gathering from this, it's kind of weird how they word it, is that anytime you cast Medica 2, or Cure 3, you'll also get, like, an additional 200 potency of ability healing on top of that. So it just adds a little bit more healing to these 3 healing spells in particular. It doesn't work on a Flatch's Rapture, though, which is unfortunate, because I feel like we'd be using a Flatch's Solace before we use any of these if we had the opportunity to. But yeah, that's kind of unfortunate that it doesn't work with a Flatch's Solace, but or a Flatch's Rapture rather. But yeah, it's now just kind of a weird AoE healing cooldown, which is odd. And then we go over to Temperance, which is the kind of the major cool thing that we kind of get as a White Mage that we saw in the benchmark trailer. This is the ability that gives you wings, has 2-minute cooldown, increases your magic potency by 20%, and also reduces damage taken by self and all nearby party members by 10% last 20 seconds. So it's basically largesse, but with also a damage reduction tied to it, and also a slightly longer recast time, 30 seconds added to that. And also it looks cooler because you get wings. So yeah, not much else to say about that other than that it is a massive amount of extra healing and a lot less damage taken. So this is going to be really awesome for when there's a lot of raid-wide damage going out to your entire party. But it's also helpful just for single target healing as well, just not nearly as effective, but still pretty good to use. Now this brings up kind of an odd point, is that I feel like White Mage has too much healing, which is kind of a weird thing to be saying, but it really does have way too much healing. I feel like at this point, like you look at just ignore this all basically is all healing. The only things in all of these are healing. The only things that don't affect healing in any way are Fluid Aura and Raise, and I guess you can kind of say Thin Air, but it still kind of helps in a certain way. But everything else is healing or damage mitigation. Divine Medicine, I'm looking at you. And I feel like it's too much. It's too much, especially AoE healing in particular. I feel like Cure 3 doesn't even have a place anymore because you have so many options for AoE healing on White Mage in particular. It is ridiculous how much AoE healing White Mage has. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 spells slash abilities that do AoE healing. On top of that, you have Plenary Indulgence and Temperance to increase your healing potency on AoE healing as well. I know Temperance isn't specifically tied to AoE healing, but Plenary Indulgence is. And that's just, it's ridiculous. There's so many ways to AoE heal and so many ways to increase your AoE healing that I don't think Cure 3 even has a place anymore. And I feel like it should just honestly just be removed at this point, because I don't think I'm ever going to need to cast Cure 3 anymore, because I feel like if for whatever reason, if a Flatch's Rapture Medica or Medica 2 isn't enough, I still have a Size, I still have Asylum, I still maybe even have another of Flatch's Rapture, because I might have more than one Lily, saved up at that time. On top of that, Plenary Indulgence is already making my Medica basically very close to Cure 3's potency already, whilst having the benefit of costing significantly less MP and also having a much larger radius. You know what I mean? And then Medica 2 already, just with one take of Medica 2, it's already doing as much healing as a Medica is, as just a normal Medica is. So it's like too much healing. I don't know what they're thinking here. There's really just too much healing. I think that I'm never gonna use Cure 3 again, unless something really drastically happens and I just happen to have nothing else. I don't think I'm gonna be using Cure 3. There's just too much healing. There really is. I mean, single target healing, it makes a bit more sense why there's more options for that, because sometimes you need to divert your single target healing focus between more than just one target, and some things stack and synergize with each other between spells and abilities and regens and all that. But AoE healing in particular, it just feels like there's too much overlapping, and because of that, some of the healing spells kind of lose their purpose. Like Medica, like the only reason why I'd say Medica, I'd still use Medica, is just because I might not have a Lily when I need just a little bit of AoE healing, and I might not have a Lily to cast a Flatch's Rapture. I might not have a Size or Asylum ready. And because Plenary Indulgence in particular will increase Medica's potency, I feel like Medica does still have a place. But Cure 3, I don't think so. Especially with Medica 2 having a lot of its healing kind of front loaded into like just the 15 seconds now, like it was back in 2.0. Yeah, I don't know. I know I'm spending a lot of time harping on the fact that I'm never gonna have to use Cure 3 anymore, but I don't know. That's just kind of one thing I see. One major problem I can kind of latch onto and kind of show you is that there's just way too much healing. Now, you can take this in kind of one of two ways. I feel like with the cut to DPSing capabilities across all the healers and the increase of healing potential, I feel like they're kind of going the route in Shadowbringers where they're finally just gonna up the amount of outgoing damage to the party, in which case healers are gonna actually need to heal more. Now, that's gonna be fine for like primals, like extreme primals and raids and stuff like that, where naturally there's always gonna be a lot more damage and it's gonna be a bit more tougher on healers already. But I feel like for just your normal dungeon, it's not, healing in dungeons isn't gonna feel that great anymore. Especially I think on White Mage it'll be fine because you still have like a Size, you still have a Flash's Misery. But on the other two healers in particular, I don't think that healing dungeons is going to be as fun anymore without those DPS capabilities, because the amount of healing you need to do in dungeons naturally is just really low. Like, even if they do increase the amount of outgoing damage in dungeons in particular, you're not going to be healing that much. So I don't know. I really don't know. You just have to kind of wait and see, I guess. But there really is just so much healing. It's actually it's blowing my mind. There's too much. I don't know what to say other than there's just too much healing. You look at this and it's all too much healing. I mean, this DPS section, it looks sizable, but it's barely just them upgrading as you kind of go along the levels. And what it comes down to is you really just have three DPS spells across all the healers now. You have one dot, one filler, one AoE across all the healers now. So yeah, I'm just gonna move on because I'm just gonna keep going in a cycle of repeating myself on the fact that there's just too much healing. But yeah, that's gonna be something to just keep that in mind as we're kind of going through the rest of these changes. So let's hop on to Scholar next. Now, a lot of people have been telling me that they're kind of upset with how Scholar is kind of going into this, going into Shadowbringers, and I can see where they're coming from, but I myself personally aren't that upset about it. But I don't know. Let's take a look at some of these, and maybe I might change my own mind. In terms of traits, there's really nothing here special that we need to talk about because we can just kind of talk about them as we kind of go along in the spells and abilities. So yeah, let's look at this. Thankfully, there isn't just like a massive section dedicated just to healing in Scholar. There's actually other stuff in here as well, thankfully. So yeah, let's take a look at this. So Physic still does 400 potency. Nothing really important there. Lustrate still does 600 potency. Excog still does 800 potency, right? Now, someone did say, yes, you can now cast Excog on yourself, which is really nice. Like, it's going to be really nice to be able to do that while you're soloing as a Scholar, especially. So being able to cast Excog on yourself is just super nice. I'm really glad that that changes there. Same recast and potency and everything like that. Still increases the Faerie gauge, all that good stuff. Resurrection, same with Raise, is exactly the same. Although it doesn't say that you can use it in battle, but I'm just assuming that you can. It'd be kind of weird if you couldn't anymore, but I'm assuming that you can. And Ad Locum actually did see kind of an interesting change here. So still does the 300 potency, but it has different effects now. So it grants Galvanize with nullifying damage equaling to 125% of the amount of HP restored. When critical HP is restored, it also grants Catalyze, nullifying damage equaling the amount of HP restored. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So what this means is instead of having your shield just double whenever you crit, you're now going to just get a separate shield on top of that. Now, actually, this is kind of a buff to Ad Loquium, but also kind of a nerf to deployment tactics, which we'll talk about. But the way this is buff is because when you're non-critting, you're actually getting a bigger shield because it's instead of just having a shield that's equal to your cure potency like it is now, it's 125%. So you're getting a slightly bigger shield. And when you crit, instead of just having doubled, you're now getting essentially 225% of shields added together, even though they're two separate shields. And the separating of shields kind of is a positive and a negative. It's a positive because it can be stacked with Nocturnal and Seraphic shields. We'll talk about Seraphic shields later when we talk about the new Faerie we get. But it also means that when we kind of scroll over here to deployment tactics, we can only extend Galvanize effects. So that means even if you crit your Adlo, you're not going to be able to give the massive shield across the party, which is unfortunate because we actually do have Recitation now, which automatically ensures you will heal critical HP with any of these spells / abilities. So yeah, kind of unfortunate that that happens. It just means that we don't have access to that massive amount of damage mitigation. But to be honest, we still have plenty of damage mitigation across the board on Scholar and across various jobs, honestly. Like ranged DPS have their own damage mitigation. White Mage has Temperance. There's a lot of damage mitigation kind of going around. A lot of the basically healers, ranged DPS, and tanks all have party-wide damage mitigation in some form anyway. So I feel like not getting crit Adlo to just spread across the party isn't that big of a deal, in my opinion. And it's actually a stronger Ad Loquium now because of the fact that it does 125%. Normally, it is a stronger potency shield essentially. So it is stronger than what we currently have now. We talked about everything in the single target, right? Yeah, we did. Moving on to AoE, Suker has an interesting change. Right now, it's 150 potency, 150 cure potency, but it does 150 of that as the galvanized effect essentially. Now instead, it's 180 potency, but only does 125% of the cure potency as a shield. So I think this evens out so that the shield potency is actually around the same and the cure potency is just slightly higher. So I think this actually evens out to be just a buff to Suker as it is, as compared to as it is currently now in Stormblood. I almost said Shadowbringers. But yeah, I don't have the exact math, and I'm not going to do the exact math right now to kind of figure that out. Indomitability, exactly the same. I'm pretty sure 500 potency, same recast of 30 seconds, still costs Aether Flow, still increases Faerie gauge. So that's good. Indomitability, extremely helpful for dealing with AoE damage, and extremely painless to use as well. Sacred Soil, as we kind of saw in the traits, does get an interesting trait here. It still does the damage mitigation as it's always done, but now also adds a regen effect at 78, I believe, which is 100 potency for 15 seconds. So yeah, 500 potency, cure potency for as long as you're standing in it. And because we lost Shadow Flare, there's nothing to kind of overwrite Sacred Soil, so your Sacred Soils are now always just going to last 15 seconds no matter what. You're not going to have to worry about overwriting it with Shadow Flare. Even though it kind of sucks that we don't have Shadow Flare anymore as a consequence of that. It's still interesting enough, still has a 20% chance that your Suker will not cost MP. So that's still there, I guess. Cool. I mean, it's helpful sometimes, I guess. Moving on to utility, emergency tactics is still the same. Transforms the next galvanized status into HP recovery. This kind of goes back to Ad Loquium. So now whenever you crit your Ad Loquium, instead of just getting a massive heal, which honestly, if you ever galvanized an Ad Loquium that ended up critting, you're almost certainly going to be overhealing a lot anyway. So this kind of transforms it so that now you're still getting a pretty massive heal. Like that's like a 700 potency heal. You're just getting also a shield attached to that as well, instead of just a massive heal in case your Ad Loquium ends up critting whilst using emergency tactics. But you can still use this with Suker and get the cure potency all the same as well. Deployment tactics extends galvanized effect. Since Eye for an Eye isn't in the game anymore, it's not attached to deployment tactics anymore. And as we kind of already talked about, crit ad lows, unfortunately, you don't get the massive amount of shields kind of extended to everybody, just the base shield effect, which is still helpful. Don't get me wrong, that's still a nice amount of damage mitigation, but just can't get the crit ad low shields deployed on everyone anymore. Change stratagem, I think it's exactly the same. There might be slightly different, but I'm pretty sure it's exactly the same as it is now. Whoops. Dissipation kind of got an interesting change that I actually really like. So it still gets rid of your Faerie. It still increases your magic potency by 20%. It still lasts 30 seconds, but it will now automatically resummon your Faerie once it ends, which is great. You don't have to worry about having to resummon your Faerie anymore. You don't have to, burn Swiftcast to resummon them and waste the GCD. They'll just automatically get resummoned, which I think is an awesome change. And it also still gives you a full stack of Aether Flow, which is nice. Now, we did lose the Quicken Aether Flow trait for Aether Flow, which that's the trait where every time you use an Aether Flow ability, it reduces Aether Flow's cooldown by 5% or 5 seconds. So essentially it meant that as long as you were using your Aether Flows as you were getting them, it meant that your Aether Flow ability cooldown would be 45 seconds as long as you were using your Aether Flows. And you could kind of abuse Dissipation to kind of make your next Aether Flow even shorter cooldown by just getting another 3 stacks and essentially making your next Aether Flow 30 seconds. But since Quicken Aether Flow isn't in the game anymore, you can't use that. But I think that this is a lot more usable now, the fact that it automatically resummons your Faerie. Now, I actually do think, I don't use Dissipation enough to remember, but I do think this actually, the recast time might have been increased from 2 minutes to 3 minutes, or it might just already be 3 minutes. I don't know. I don't use Dissipation nearly enough to remember the recast time, but just know that it is 3 minutes. Recitation, we kind of already talked about. It has a 90-second recast time, and it automatically makes it so that your Ad Loquium, Sugar, Indomitability, or Excog will automatically crit HP, which is pretty massive, honestly. I mean, even though you can't extend your full Ad Loquium, your full crit Ad Low with deployment taxes anymore, that's still a massive amount of healing and a massive shield, and using it on Indom is a massive AoE heal, and using it on XCOF is also a massive single target heal. So a lot of extra healing you can do with Recitation here, which is really nice. Just kind of a nice tool to have on Scholar. 90 seconds isn't that long of a cooldown either. We still have Aether Flow. Still thankfully restores 10% of your max HP, or max MP, sorry, and still gives you your 3 stacks of Aether Flow. I think you still have 3 stacks, right? Do you have 3 stacks or 2 stacks now? I don't think it says. Yeah, I don't think it says, but I'm assuming you still have 3 stacks. I think it's Summoner that only has 2 stacks now that I'm thinking of. But yeah. Moving over to DPS spells, Bio 2, Biolysis. Again, it's just the same dot, just getting upgraded as you kind of level up as you go along. We got rid of Miasma and Miasma 2, as we kind of already discussed earlier, which is unfortunate. And also no Bane as well, unfortunately. DPS spells. Now this is kind of interesting. Ruin goes into Broil, goes into Broil 2, goes into Broil 3. Nothing too special there. Since we lost Miasma 2, we instead get Art of War. It's still an instant cast. It just isn't a dot. It's just a flat 150 potency. But it actually costs 800 MP, which is kind of... That's a lot. That's a lot of MP. Like, Holy, I think, only costs 600 MP. And that stuns. And this is just 10 more potency, and it's instant cast. And it... Apparently that's enough to make it cost 200 more MP, which is kind of weird. But yeah, that's quite a bit of MP, in my opinion. I feel like you're actually gonna have problems maybe burning through your MP a little fast, using Art of War in particular. But yeah, this is basically replacing the fact that we don't have access to Bane or Miasma 2 anymore, and just kind of homogenizes the healers, I guess, in terms of their AoE damage capabilities. You know, it is what it is. I know a lot of people really like having Miasma 2, just spamming the crap out of Miasma 2. With this, essentially, you're just spamming the crap out of Art of War. You just don't have access to the dot, and you don't have access to Bane anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. Ruin 2 is actually a pretty interesting change. It's still instant cast, and it's separate to kind of the Ruin, Broil, and Broil upgrading thing, and the fact that it is instant cast, but it now does 200 potency. It costs 600 MP, which is quite a bit more than just using a normal Broil, and it does 80 potency less than a Broil 3 in particular. But having it insta-cast means you can use it while moving, and you can use it to use abilities without clipping, and you have a lot of abilities on Scholar to use. So it is kind of nice that we kind of get this. As it was before, using Miasma 2 actually was kind of the go-to thing in case you wanted to use your abilities without clipping. So it is kind of nice. I honestly would have kind of preferred if they just did the Astrologian treatment of having your single target DPS spells just cast a little bit faster, so you have just a little bit of time to use abilities without clipping your GCDs. But at least for Scholar, you have Ruin 2. White Mage doesn't have anything like that. I don't think so. Yeah. It says summoner actions here, but essentially these are just having to deal with your pet. You have Summon Seraph, which is new Faerie. One thing we kind of need to talk about before that is that Eos and Selene are just kind of the same thing now. It doesn't matter if you have Eos or Selene. The only difference between the two of them is how they look. So just pick whichever one you like. They both have access to the exact same abilities. So just something to kind of talk about before we talk about Seraph. But Seraph kind of acts kind of like Demi Bahamut acts, is that you summon her, and she's kind of on the field for 20 seconds, and then she's gone. I don't think there's any like gauge or anything you need to meet in order to summon Seraph. It's just a cooldown of 2 minutes, and then you can summon her for 20 seconds, and she's out on the field. And she does have different abilities compared to just your normal Eos and your normal Selene. And we'll talk about those as we kind of go through all these pet actions. Aether Pact is still the same. It's still, I think, the only use of your Faerie gauge, unfortunately. I was kind of hoping that they would add something else for you to use with your Faerie gauge, but it seems like Aether Pact is still the only thing. And the actual potency of Fae Union here brought down, actually. It's 480 potency right now, but it says 400. Now, when we're talking about pet potencies, or Faerie potencies in particular, it's important to note that, at least how it is in Stormblood, your Faerie's potency is not the same as your potency. So if you were to cure, let's say, if you were to cure for 400 potency on Physic, if your fairy had a 400 potency cure, which she doesn't, but if she did, it would not be the same. It would not do the same amount of healing. It would do significantly less healing than yours. Your fairy's potencies are much less than yours, as it is currently in Stormblood. They might be changing it in Shadowbringers because the potencies are kind of lower. Like on Embrace in particular, 150 potency is really low. But they might be changing it so that your fairy's potencies are just kind of equal to your potencies now, which would be kind of nice to just have it like that, so it's less confusing. Because I remember somebody was like making the argument. It's like, yo, Fae Union is freaking awesome. It's like a 480 potency, which is much higher than your Physic. But if you go and cast Fae Union, each tick of Fae Union is not gonna do as much as your 400 potency Physic will. That's just because fairy potencies are much lower than your own potencies as a scholar. So just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to be how it is going into Shadowbringers, but it is possible that these potencies are not exactly telling the truth. Basically, it's not equal to what you would do if you were to output these potencies yourself. So just kind of keep that in mind. Until we kind of get access to the game, I'm not going to be entirely sure on where fairy potencies land. But as it is currently in the game, is about like 40% less. Fairy potencies are about 40% less than yours, just kind of like just like very quick calculations that I did. It's not exact numbers, but just kind of keep that in mind as we kind of talk about all these fairy actions and stuff. So one thing that's kind of interesting is that a lot of the fairy abilities kind of got either removed or kind of consolidated. Basically, Celine's abilities got pretty much all removed. You got rid of Fey Wind, you got rid of the AoE cleanse, and no one was using the silence anyway. It was garbage. It was unreliable. No one was using it anyway. So all of Celine's abilities got removed, and the rest of the abilities just kind of got consolidated as well. Embrace is still a thing that both fairies have access to. Whispering Dawn still does the exact same thing, I believe. I think we actually might have lost 20 potency. I think it's 140 potency on Whispering Dawn currently. But yeah, that's still there. Still has a 60-second cooldown. Fae Illumination had Fae Covenant's ability kind of mashed into here, and also got a reduction. Increases magic potency of self and nearby party members by 10%, while also reducing magic damage taken by self and nearby party members by 5% for 20 seconds. So Fae Illumination is basically a weaker version of Temperance, but you can have the magic potency effect across all of your healers, basically. So it'll affect you, it'll affect your fairy, and it'll affect your healing partner if you happen to have one. So it's nice. It's nice. It still has a 2-minute cooldown, and it's nice to use. It's not bad by any stretch. It's kind of weak, I guess, but it helps. It's not bad. I think combining Fae Illumination and Fae Covenant together, and just kind of evening out the numbers a bit, I think that's a positive change, in my opinion. And what consolidating Fae Covenant into Fae Illumination allows us to do is get an AoE heal on our fairy, which is instacast Fae Blessing, which has a 60-second recast time, and it's a flat 250 potency cure. So on top of also having Whispering Dawn, which is an AoE regen, we now just have a flat AoE cure on our fairy as well. Now, something that's kind of interesting is that we're basically getting Enkindle type abilities for telling our pet actions, or for commanding our fairies to do these actions. So like, you can't just put Embrace on your bar anymore, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it says so. You cannot assign this to a hotbar. Instead, you're kind of doing the Enkindle way of doing it, where you have to pressing Fae Illumination on your bar will command your fairy to do Fae Illumination. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, because as it is now, with pet actions on both Scholar and Summoner, you can actually trigger your pet actions whilst you're mid cast, for instance. But with these, I'm not entirely sure if you need to not be casting in order to use these. I'm assuming you need to not be casting in order to use these abilities, because I'm pretty sure that's how Enkindle works on Summoner. So yeah, that's kind of a nerf to the flexibility of using pet actions. at the cost of kind of consolidating pet actions altogether. So yeah, kind of a messy change there, I feel. And if it is how I'm guessing it is, whereas you can't use these while you're mid cast, then it is definitely kind of a big nerf to your flexibility on using pet actions, which is a bit unfortunate. But it is what it is, I guess. And then we have these specific actions which are specific to Seraph. So let's look at these. So you have Angel's Whisper, which is basically the same thing as Whispering Dawn, exact same potency, exact same cooldown, I believe. Aether Pack, summon. Yeah, okay. Whispering Dawn just changes to make it so that Angel's Whisper happens instead. So it's same button. Seraphic Illumination, again, is the exact same thing as Fae Illumination. It's just it might have a different looking animation, but it's exactly the same in terms of number, potency, cooldown, and everything like that. What is different is Consolation and Seraphic Veil. So Consolation, we kind of scoot over here. You can carry 2 charges of this actually. Has a 20-second charge time, instant cast, and it will restore the HP of everyone around you. It's basically a mini Suker. So it does an AoE around the Faerie and everyone around the Faerie for 150, and also erects a barrier that is equaling to the amount of healing restored and lasts 30 seconds. So it's basically a mini Suker that's tied to Seraph. And then you have Seraphic Veil, which I'm assuming this replaces Embrace, and it's basically a stronger Embrace, which also has a add low effect on it. So it erects a barrier equaling the amount of HP restored. So it's that's actually a pretty significant single target heal compared to Embrace. So Embrace being only 150 potency, this is another 50 potency on top of that, plus a barrier which doubles the potency essentially. So yeah, that's 400 potency versus 150 potency. That's actually a pretty big change there. So yeah, that's nice. So when you have Seraph out, get a little bit more mitigation out, and it will also help very much for single target healing as well. Now, the thing about Seraph here is that I'm kind of unsure of is that Consolation has 2 charges, has a charge time of 20 seconds. I'm not sure if you need to have Seraph out in order to be charging this. My assumption is no. I think that this just means that you can only have 2 Consolations during each Seraph cast, I guess. So like the fact that Seraph only lasts 20 seconds means that even if you use a Consolation right as you summon Seraph, you won't ever get to use 3. I think that's what this is trying to say. So I'm pretty sure that you can just charge up your Consolations even if Seraph isn't out. It just means that whenever you have Seraph out, you have 2 charges, and you should make sure to use both charges, I guess, since you'll essentially have 100 seconds to recharge and get your 2 charges back before your next Seraph cast anyway. So yeah, I think that's what's happening there with Consolation. And I think we've pretty much talked about everything, right? Yeah, that's pretty much everything. So thoughts on Scholar. Again, we lost a lot of DPS stuff. We lost Miasma 2, we lost Bane, we lost Energy Drain, which means that you only have access to healing and damage mitigation and stuff like that. You have no way of dealing damage basically with your Aether Flow stacks anymore. So if you never need to burn Aether Flow stacks, which you should never use your Aether Flow ability to gain your stacks without having burnt everything off, because that's just a waste of gauge, then you should probably just be popping Lustrates. Just pop Lustrates. If your Aether Flow is coming off cooldown and you need to use it, or you're gonna pop Dissipation anyway, just pop Lustrates, get that Fairy gauge up by how many ever stacks you have left over, so that you're not wasting your Aether Flow stacks. Because unfortunately, Energy Drain is gone, as well as Bane. That is unfortunate. But overall, I mean, putting aside the DPS changes, which I know for a lot of scholars that is a major deal, but just kind of putting those aside, I am actually kind of happy with how Scholar is in terms of its healing toolkit, its healing and damage mitigation toolkit, because it has a ton of damage mitigation tied into it. But I am actually very satisfied with it. I think it has enough. It has a nice balance between healing and damage mitigation with its shields, that it doesn't feel like there's too much of it, like with White Mage. With White Mage, I feel like there's just too much AoE healing in particular. There's too much healing overlap, and there's not enough damage mitigation mixed in there to kind of take away from that overlap on White Mage. But with Scholar, I feel like there's a nice balance between the two of them in particular, that I actually kind of like Scholar's healing toolkit in particular. Disappointed just as everyone else is about its lack of DPS utility. No Aether Flow, or no Aether Flow, no Bane, no Energy Drain. Miasma 2 and Miasma are both gone. Now it's just again, every single healer has the single target dot, single target filler, and their AoE damaging spell. That's all they got. And yeah, so kind of unfortunate about the DPS capabilities, but aside from that, just looking at the rest of Scholar's toolkit, I'm actually kind of happy with it. I actually like the fact that we're finally getting another Faerie, even though it's kind of in the vein of like Demi Bahamut. You just something you can summon occasionally and last for kind of a shorter duration than just having a whole nother Faerie. In fact, the fact that Eos and Celine, there's no differentiating between the two other than her looks. It's kind of, I mean, it kind of sucks that there's no difference, but at the same time, it's just like whatever. I mean, Celine kind of didn't have much of a place anyway in Stormblood, because the AoE cleanse, the only reason you would ever need the AoE cleanse is if your party messed up and didn't handle a mechanic properly and everyone got paralysis 3 or something. No one was using the silence, and Fae Wind, despite being a DPS increase, was a very insignificant one, and the only reason you were using it was either if you had time to use it pre-pull, or some other. Essentially, that was the only time you were using Fae Wind, is if you were using it pre-pull, because Eos's toolkit was just way better. So yeah, I mean, I wasn't using Celine anyway, so now I just get to use Eos or Celine. They both do the same thing now. Kind of unfortunate if you really like Celine, but whatever. There's no differentiating between the two. I am pretty happy with Seraph. I mean, 2 of her abilities are exactly the same as Eos and Celine's, but Consolation and Seraphic Veil are pretty cool in my opinion, and we'll add quite a bit. It's kind of like a healing cooldown in itself, kind of, sort of, in a way. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Scholar. I'm actually kind of happy with it. I know there's a lot of people who are actually really upset about Scholar, and that's mostly aimed towards its DPS capabilities kind of getting gutted, which I can totally understand. But I myself am actually kind of excited to kind of try out how Scholar's going to play, especially with Seraph and kind of the new Faerie changes. Also, kind of a negative is also the changes to how pet actions are going to be used. If I'm assuming if it is how it is, where you can't use it while casting anymore, then it's going to suck, because it's going to take away kind of that flexibility you've had with being able to use pet actions while in the middle of casting something. But yeah, we're going to have to wait and see with Scholar. But overall, disappointed with the DPS capabilities, as I am with all 3 healers across the board, honestly. Well, Astrologian didn't actually change that much, because that's all Astrologian had. But with Scholar and White Mage, both kind of disappointed with kind of the cutting down on DPS capabilities there. But overall, healing and utility toolkit on Scholar, I'm actually kind of interested to see and test it out myself, because yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I'm actually kind of looking forward to testing it out. So we'll have to see when Shadowbringers comes out. And now we should move on to Astrologian. We've been going on for an hour, kind of like the last time I did this. But oh boy, we come to Astrologian, and I'm going to tell you right now, I am not happy with Astrologian changes. I'm not. I'm really not. Well, at least with the cards. With the cards in particular. So, yeah, let me check the traits real quick to see if there's anything I need to kind of cover. Essential Dignity getting 2 charges at level 78 is pretty cool, but other than that, nothing. Everything else is exactly the same as it is up before, or pretty self-explanatory, just upgrading certain spells. Hyper Light Speed is still in the game, which is kind of nice. Reduces light speed recast time by 10 seconds every time you execute Essential Dignity, so that's nice that that's still kind of in the game. The cards, I feel like we should save the cards for kind of later and just talk about the toolkit first. So let's just kind of do that. So let's take a look at the heals and shields section. So what do we have here? So Benefic and Benefic 2, I think, are pretty much exactly the same in terms of potency. We still have that 15% chance that Benefic 2 will restore critical HP on Benefic, which is interesting. Not as helpful as the Free Cure 2 on White Mage, which is what it's kind of similar to. But, I mean, it's a benefit. I mean, it's better for it to be there than not be there, I guess. Essential Dignity is still the same. It restores 400 base potency. Potency increases the lower target's HP is, which I believe can go up to about 1,000 potency, depending on how low the HP is. If you're at 1% HP, I believe it's about 1,000 cure potency, which is nice. Which this will synergize very well with Gunbreaker's really stupid ultimate cooldown, by the way, unless they happen to actually change it, which fingers crossed they actually do. Aspect of Benefit actually did see quite a bit of changes here. So in Diurnal Sect, it will now do 200 potency cure. I'm not actually certain what the base potency cure is on Aspect of Benefit, but I don't think it's 200 potency. But the cure, the regen effect is 200 potency as well and lasts for 15 seconds. So what this actually does is that it means that your Aspected Benefic, in Diurnal sense anyway, actually does the same amount of healing over its duration as White Mage's regen, and it costs the same MP, by the way, 500 MP on White Mage's regen as well. The only difference is that you kind of get you get the 200 cure potency kind of front loaded in exchange for having a less duration. So 3 seconds less duration, but you get 200 potency up front plus the regen effect on top of that. Looking at the Nocturnal Sect effect though, erects a barrier which nullifies damage equaling 250% of the maximum amount of MP restored or HP restored last 30 seconds. Cannot be stacked with Scholar's Galvanize, but with the Catalyze and Seraphic shields, I'm assuming you can stack Nocturnal shields with. So yeah, hopefully that's what that means. But I think this is pretty much exactly the same as it is now. I'm pretty sure Nocturnal Sect is a 200 potency cure as it is now, and 250% of a magic barrier is still as ridiculous as it is now currently in the game. So nice to kind of see that that hasn't changed as well. Really strong shield there. Ascend, same thing as Resurrection and Raise. Don't really need to spend time talking about that. This is an interesting one. Celestial Intersection. This is an instant cast ability. Has a 30-second recast time, so pretty short. And it seems to have a different effect depending on the sect you have, it looks like. Yeah, so a different effect depending on the sect you have. You don't just get both, unfortunately. So in Diurnal Sect, it will restore target's HP with 100 potency up front, and will also add a shield, actually, which nullifies 250% of the HP restored. So kind of like a weaker Aspect of Benefit, basically, or aspected a weaker Nocturnal Aspect of Benefit. Sorry if this sounds kind of confusing. I'm kind of getting confused myself in my head. But and then for Nocturnal Sect, it actually adds a 80 potency regen effect, which lasts for 10 seconds, which is kind of odd that it's 10 seconds because ticks happen, like server ticks happen every 3 seconds. So this should be 9 seconds or 12 seconds. I'm not sure why it's only 10 seconds, because that's just kind of weird. It means that you should be getting 3 ticks no matter what. But there might be that one time where you might get 4 ticks. No, I don't think it works that way. I think just you get 3 ticks of 80% regen. So this is kind of an interesting change. It basically allows it so that you can get access to regens when you're in Nocturnal Sect, and you can get access to a shield while you're in Aspect of Benefit. I think actually the shield is way more interesting or way more helpful than the kind of the really pitiful regen effect here. I mean, that 3 ticks, I mean, that essentially is let's see, 160, 240 plus the 100 up front. That's 340 potency ability heal, which is kind of low for an ability heal, even if it is only a 30-second recast time. Whereas you're kind of getting a mini, just like a mini Divine Benison while you're in Diurnal Sect. So 250 potency, that's a 250 potency shield on top of a 100 potency cure, which is a 250 potency shield isn't half bad You know, I mean, that's not bad for just having a little bit of extra mitigation for a tank buster. Sometimes that's all you would kind of need to help kind of mitigate it. Like a 250 potency shield isn't terrible by any stretch. So and it's on a short enough cooldown that you can pretty much have it up for just about any tank cooldown or tank buster. So yeah, I think the Nocturnal Sect version isn't that great, but I mean, again, it's on a 30-second recast time, so I can kind of see why it's as weak as it is. But even as weak as it is in Nocturnal Sect, and even in Diurnal Sect too, it is pretty weak in Diurnal Sect, but it's a shield, so it's always helpful. Is kind of my reasoning behind it. As weak as this is, the fact that it has a 30-second recast time it kind of makes up for the fact that you can use it so often. I can see why it's as weak as it is. So yeah, I actually like this ability as kind of underwhelming as it kind of seems on paper. It will be nice to have. So I'm actually looking forward to having that. Moving on to AoE healing now. Go over here, and you can see celestial oppositions over here. We're gonna be talking about that because that got changed. Helios got a little bit of a buff. Instead of doing 300 potency, and now does 330. Kind of an interesting change. I guess I can't really complain about it. 900 MP cost as well, so it's slightly less than a Medica. Medica, I believe, cost 1,000. Aspect of Helios. Let's see what changed here. Restores own HP, 100 potency. Diurnal Sect adds the regen, 100 potency for 15 seconds. This is actually really, really low for Aspect of Helios, I feel. Medica 2 does a 200 potency cure up front and has a 200 potency regen that lasts the same duration and only costs 100 more MP. This only has 100 potency up front, 100 potency regen, and still only lasts 15 seconds. So it's basically a let's see what that's at. That's a 600 potency. Oh, wait. What am I talking about? I'm stupid. Disregard what I just said. I don't know why I thought Medica 2 was 200 potency regen, but essentially it's slightly weaker. I don't know why I thought Medica 2 was the 200 potency regen effect, but it's 100 potency. So essentially it just means it's the exact same as Medica 2. It's just a little less upfront healing, and it costs 100 potency less, which kind of that doesn't really make up for the loss in cure potency here. I don't feel. Disregard what I said. It's just about as strong as Medica 2, just 100 potency less on the upfront heal. In Nocturnal Sect, it erects the barrier, which nullifies 250 potency of the amount of HP restored. So that's a 250 potency shield on everybody, which with Scholar being 180 and then 125%, it might be a little bit stronger than Suker. Maybe, I don't know. I don't have the exact math, and I'm not going to calculate it out right now, like I said. But it's around where Suker is in terms of Nocturnal Sect's potency. So they're around their equivalents. So in Diurnal Sect, it's around the same as Medica 2, and Nocturnal Sect, it's around the same as Suker, as is what I'm taking away from here. Earthly Star, we're going to kind of skip Celestial Opposition right now and talk about Earthly Star, since there's not much that changed about Earthly Star. It still has the same cure potencies, I believe, but the amount of damage that it does has been nerfed a bit. I believe in Stellar Burst it's 150 potency right now, and then in Stellar Explosion is 200 potency, and those both got reduced by 50 each. So it does a little bit less DPS, but still does the same amount of healing. So yeah, that sucks. Less DPS, which is not something that healers don't want to be hearing right now, but less DPS on Earthly Star, unfortunately. And then we get to Celestial Opposition, which has been changed. With the removal of Time Dilation, I believe, right? Time Dilation isn't in the game anymore. Yep, Time Dilation is gone. Celestial Opposition doesn't just extend effects anymore. It's been completely reworked to basically an AoE heal, or an AoE ability. So restores own HP, 100 potency. It also adds a 60 potency regen effect for 15 seconds. So just another AoE heal / regen effect on Celestial Opposition. So you have two different, like, you have a spell version and this is an ability version, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely weaker than Aspect of Helix, and also it's an ability, so it doesn't get affected by like healing potency increases. But you know, that's not terrible to have. It has a 2-minute recast time though, which if you go and compare that back to like Scholar's Whispering Dawn, which has half the recast time and about the same. Actually, let me go take a look at the exact potency on Scholar while we're kind of talking about this. Yeah, Whispering Dawn has a 120 potency over 21 seconds. So Whispering Dawn does do more, I believe, over its full duration, because this is 5 ticks of 60. So that's 400 potency total to everyone around you. And then, let's see, Whispering Dawn is 120 for 7 ticks. So yeah, definitely Whispering Dawn's doing a lot more healing than Celestial Opposition is. And also having shorter cooldown of half. But again, Faerie potencies up in the air on if those are weaker than just a normal healing potency that you have or not. So it's very possible that Whispering Dawn is just about as effective as Diurnal Celestial Opposition is. And then on Nocturnal Sect, still does 150 or 100 potency, but erects a 150 potency barrier. So 150 potency barrier, kind of small. I mean that it is an ability, but I mean, I guess you can't really argue since it's an ability. It can't be too strong. But I think for a 2-minute cooldown, I do think that the numbers are kind of low here. I feel like either they should probably reduce this to maybe like 90 seconds or maybe buff the numbers a little bit. I feel like Celestial Opposition in particular is just kind of underwhelming. See, I'm willing to swallow Celestial Intersections kind of lower potencies because it's only got a 30-second recast and it's single target, so it's a little bit more niche. But in terms of like Celestial Opposition, I don't know, it just kind of feels weak on both fronts, and it has really long cooldown as well. I mean, you look at Earthly Star, that's 720 potency just up front, insta cast, has half the cooldown as Celestial Opposition does. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like Celestial Opposition either needs to get its recast reduced a little bit or have its numbers increased a little bit in order to be a bit more useful, in my opinion. But I don't know, I guess we'll have to wait and see how useful it actually is. Moving on to DPS, we don't have to spend very long here because it's very simple. Your combusts get stronger as you level up. Your Malefics get stronger as you level up. And you have Gravity, which is 700 potency, which is, again, 100 potency more than Holy. And it actually does less than Holy as well. For the benefit of being a targeted spell, I guess. So you can cast this from far away, as opposed to Holy, you need to be in closer proximity, which is kind of not a great trade-off in my opinion. I feel like Holy is, if we're using Holy as a baseline, I feel like Art of War and Gravity, the abilities that they do and the potency they do, and it's just, it doesn't add up. I don't feel like Art of War being instant cast and doing 10% or 10 more potency warrants the extra MP cost, and I don't think that Gravity just being able to cast this from farther away warrants the extra MP cost, especially when it does less damage as well, which is kind of unfortunate. But I don't suspect they're going to make any changes to Gravity or Art of War, so I wouldn't even hold my breath on that. Looking at Diurnal and Nocturnal Sect, we can kind of see that you no longer get the just passive healing potency increases on either sect. It just changes whether or not you get the regens or you get the shields on certain abilities that we've already covered. So what is kind of interesting though is we get Neutral Sect, which is kind of your healing cooldown. It'll increase your healing magic potency by 20% and will also make it so that you can gain both your Diurnal and Nocturnal Sect effects from the corresponding spells and abilities, which is really cool. Last 20 seconds has a 2-minute cooldown. I think this is actually really strong. I kind of just wish, again, that Neutral Sect was just its own thing. You didn't have the magic potency tied to it, and you could just have largesse like normal, just have these separate things, because this seems like just that's a lot of stuff to have just all at once, You know what I mean? I feel like you wouldn't actually, there would be very select situations where you would actually need all of this for 20 seconds, by the way, which is quite a lengthy amount of time. So it's a really cool cooldown. I just kind of wish that it's really strong. I just kind of wish that they just separated it into just having largesse like we've always had, and then just having neutral sec just give you both effects, and then just, I don't know. That's just me though. I just kind of like having those kind of things separate, I guess. And then we move on to some last minute utility things before we go check up the cards. Divination actually does affect the cards, so we'll kind of come back to this after we talk about them. Light speed reduces MP cost by spells by 50% and cast times by spells by 2.5 seconds. So basically the same thing that we have. We also do have that trait. Hold on, let me pull up that trait real quick. Hyper light speed, which will reduce the cast time. Hello, internet. Thank you. Which will reduce the cast time of light speed, or recast time of light speed, for 10 seconds by every essential dignity use. And having charges of essential dignity as well at level 78 can kind of synergize with that as well. So yeah, you can get quite your light speed down by quite a bit, honestly, depending on how much essential dignity you have stored up at the timing of casting light speed, I guess. But yeah, you can definitely get your light speed down, your light speed recast down by quite a bit using that trait and essential dignity at the same time. So kind of cool to see that light speed's kind of still in the game, since unfortunately Astrologians still don't have a way of increasing their MP other than Lucid. So having light speed is definitely helpful, and you can still use this to throw out your essentially everything except Ascend pretty much instantly while moving. So that's nice utility to still have on Astrologian. Sinistry got the healing potency unfortunately removed from Sinistry. It was pretty ridiculous, to be completely honest, and I think it got its recast time upped from 90 seconds back to 2 minutes. Instead, it just has the original effect, which is you put it on a target party member whenever you cast a single target healing spell. That party member will also receive 40% of the original spell and last 20 seconds. So really good for healing 2 targets at once, in case you have both your main tank and off tank tanking, or maybe maybe your DPS took a hit, so you can throw this on the DPS or throw this on the main tank and then focus heal whichever one you didn't put it on, and then heal both at the same time. Still some nice utility with Sinistry, and some nice some interesting things you can do with a Sinistry. Horoscope is kind of an interesting one here, and it's kind of confusing, the wording here, but what I'm gathering from this is Horoscope is kind of like how Plenary Indulgence works currently in the game. So it says read your fortune and those of nearby party members, granting them Horoscope, which lasts for 10 seconds. And then the effect gets upgraded to Horoscope Helios upon receiving the effects of Helios or Aspect to Helios. So basically, you pop this before you start healing, and then if you use Helios or Aspect to Helios, you'll get Horoscope Helios, which will last 20 seconds. And then I think you can pop this again, and it will heal HP if they have Horoscope Helios on them. The problem I have here is that there's actually nowhere does it say how much potency Horoscope Helios actually heals. Like, if you take a look at the traits, there's nothing in here in traits that says how much Horoscope Helios does. I think if you go look at Aspect to Helios and Helios itself, it doesn't say anything about Horoscope Helios at all. So I don't know how much Horoscope Helios actually does, but I imagine that it's probably around maybe like 200, maybe 300 potency. It doesn't look like you can stack it more than once, and it does look like you need to actually cast this before you start healing. I don't know. It's needlessly convoluted when they could have just made a carbon copy of what they did with Plenary Indulgence back on White Mage for Shadowbringers that we just talked about. But yeah, kind of a problem that there's nothing here that tells me how much Horoscope Helios will actually heal. So hopefully this kind of gets fixed, and we actually get something in the tooltip that tells us how much potency this actually does. But yeah, that's Horoscope Helio, so another avenue for AoE healing, I guess. Excuse me, I had to sneeze real quick. So yeah, now we should talk about the cards. Oh boy, the cards. So we already talked about how time dilation got removed and celestial opposition got reworked, so it doesn't increase effects anymore. So increasing the time on your cards, not a thing anymore. On top of that, you'll notice that a lot of the abilities that kind of work with your cards are kind of gone. Spread is gone, as well as Royal Road is gone. And basically all of the cards you have and any of the abilities that affect your cards have been completely reworked. So if you are familiar with how Astrologian works now, be prepared to completely unlearn that, because it's going to be pretty irrelevant going into Shadowbringers, unfortunately, because I do not like how Astrologian is going to be performing in Shadowbringers personally. But let's just kind of take a look at it so you can kind of see for yourself. So one change that I kind of do like, which I've kind of been having problems with recently, is that draw and play are now completely separate things. So now when you draw a card, instead of having the card remain in the exact same key that you draw is, instead whatever card you draw will get put into your play ability, and that is how you use your card. So I've been having problems where I've been mashing my draw button and then I've accidentally drawn a card and then instantly used it by accident. So this will kind of prevent that now. So that is actually a nice change that I really like. Redraw is still in the game, and you can now have maximum charges of up to 3. Charge time is 30 seconds, which I think is exactly how it is now, but now you can obviously stack it up to 3 times, which is kind of nice. Undraw returns the currently drawn card back to the deck. I'm not sure why you would ever want to do that anymore. Like, there's never a reason why you'd want to, but you can. I don't actually see a point in using undraw anymore. But it's still in the game, I guess. So that's there. Yeah, I don't know. And sleeve draw, this is kind of confusing wording. Recast resets the recast of draw and grants 2 stacks of sleeve draw, which lasts for 30 seconds. And sleeve draw effect reduces the recast time of draw to 3 seconds, consumes a stack of sleeve draw each time an arcanum is drawn. So essentially what this does, it essentially means that once every 3 minutes you can draw 3 cards in kind of quick succession every 3 seconds. So so gives you 2 stacks of sleeve draw, and so you do your first draw, and then it'll put draws cooldown 3 seconds. Use your second draw, puts draws cooldown 3 seconds, and then you get a normal draw cooldown after that third card. So essentially allows you to draw 3 cards within about 7 seconds of each other, which is kind of nice, I guess. Kind of a weird wording that it's kind of confusing reading it, but when you kind of put it together with how draw is working, that's essentially what it does. It essentially allows you to draw 3 cards within about 7 seconds of each other, depending on if you're using your card as soon as you get it, essentially. And then minor arcana still kind of works kind of the same, kind of. Instead of being RNG now, it's dependent on the card you draw, and it'll give you the Lady Crowns or Lord of the Crowns depending on the draw you use minor arcana with, which we should talk about the cards themselves because they have been reworked, so now they're all just balances. Yep, all the cards are just balances now, because that's totally the change Astrologian needed. So now with your cards, with the balance, the arrow, and the spear, you'll increase damage dealt by a party member if they are a melee DPS by 6%, or if they are any other class type, it'll be 3%, and they will all last for 15 seconds. No longer is it a 30-second thing, it's a 15 seconds. So now you can't just have 30-second durations, and you can't extend them in any way anymore. Remember, because Celestial Opposition got reworked, and time dilation is no longer in the game. And then for the bull, it's the kind of the opposite. If you're a ranged DPS, it's 6%, and then or for the bull, the ewer, and the spire, if you're a ranged DPS, it's 6% increase damage dealt, and for everything else, it's 3%. Now, when it says ranged DPS, I'm assuming this includes both physical range DPS and caster DPS, So if for some reason this just means range DPS, as in bard, dancer, and machinist, and just all the casters are left out, that'd be kind of messed up. I'm just assuming that it's just kind of unclear wording. It also affects casters as well, I'm assuming. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's the difference between just having one for melee DPS and one for range DPS? The difference is seals. So if the balance and the bowl will grant solar seals, the arrow and the ewer will grant lunar seals, and the spear and the spire will grant celestial seals. What are the seals used for? Well, divination. This is an ability that you'll get at level 50, has a recast time of 3 minutes, and essentially, depending on the amount of seals that you currently have, it will essentially increase the damage dealt by the entire party. For actually doesn't say. I'm guessing it's just 15 seconds. Increases damage dealt by self and nearby party members. Potency is determined by the type of seals in play. Doesn't say how long it lasts, but assuming that all the cards last for 15 seconds, I'm just going to assume that it lasts for 15 seconds. So, yeah, if you have no different seals or just one seal or even just two seals, it will only be a 3% damage increase for all party members. But if you have 3 different seals, then it will be 6%. So your goal as an astrologian now is to essentially hope and pray that you get each seal basically within 3 minutes. So without any manipulations, using sleeve draw or redraw, every 3 minutes. So that's 6 tries basically. You have 6 tries with draw to get the 3 different seals. Obviously, you have access to sleeve draw to put draw on cooldown on a much shorter cooldown, so you can get more draws out. You also have redraw to kind of help manipulate that as well. And yeah, so that is your goal now as an astrologian. Your astrologian is basically praying to RN Jesus. That is your entire goal as an astrologian. Other than obviously trying to give the proper card to the right DPS. So obviously you want to try and give your balance, your arrows, and your spears to melee DPS, and the bold, the ewer, and the spire to your ranged DPS and casters. You obviously don't want to be mix matching those and giving the inefficient cards to the wrong person. But yeah, that's your goal as an astrologian now. No longer is it about getting a certain card and finding the right purpose to use it, and or any of all that. No, that's completely gone, trashed in the garbage. Now it's just everything is a weaker balance, and you're just hoping and praying that you get 3 different cards to kind of gather all your seals, so that when you do go to use divination, you get the max amount of potency on divination. Now, once you've kind of gathered all 3 seals and you're kind of waiting for your divination to come off cooldown, that is where Minor Arcana and Lady of the Crowns and Lord of the Crowns comes into play. So essentially, if you have the balance, the arrow, or the spear, which affect melee DPS primarily, then it will turn into the Lord of the Crowns. And if you have the bowl, ewer, or spire, it will turn into Lady of the Crowns, which basically just increases the potency of the card without granting you any seals for it. So if you already have 3 seals, this is what you'll be doing with your cards. You'll be kind of channeling them through Minor Arcana first to kind of make them slightly stronger, and then still handing them out to the appropriate type of DPS. And that's it with your cards. That's it. And my thoughts on this changes? I don't like it. I really don't. It kind of gets rid of kind of the complexity of Astrologian and just turns Astrologian basically into a slot machine. That's what Astrologian is. It's just praying for RNG to be on your side. Now, you still have ways to kind of get more slot pulls to try and make sure you get all 3 seals, which I imagine it's going to be pretty difficult with sleeve draw and the amount of redraws you'll have access to not get 3 seals. Like it'd be pretty shitty RNG if you somehow manage to not get all 3 seals within a 3-minute window with all the amount of slots you can essentially pull. But that's all Astrologian kind of boils down to with the cards now. Gone is the manipulation with Royal Road. Putting your Royal Roads to get the expanded Royal Road, extended Royal Road, enhanced Royal Road, all that stuff gone. It's all gone. Spread is gone. Saving a card for a specific phase, that's gone. Extending the time on a certain card for your better DPS, that's gone. Celestial Opposition increasing your expanded effects and on all the whole party, that's gone. All the complexity about Astrologian is gone, and it's just been boiled down to mini balances. And I do not like it. Now, don't get me wrong. For everyone else who isn't the Astrologian having to actually play with this very watered down system of cards, they're gonna love it because that's just DPS. No one's gonna complain about having increased DPS. But as the person actually playing Astrologian, it's gonna suck because it's gonna be boring. It's not gonna be fun at all. Now, in my opinion, I think the better approach to this would have actually been to rework the cards. Not I mean, they did technically rework the cards to make them all the balance essentially, but rework the cards so that the rest of the cards are equal to the balance, or just get rid of the balance entirely. I think what they could have done actually is this. Get rid of the balance. Just get it out of here. Get rid of the balance. Change the spire so that change the spire so that it increases direct hit rate. And then get rid of the Ewer. And then just have 4 cards. Just have the bowl, the arrow, the spear, and the spire, which now infects direct hit rate. And just have those cards, and then have the same effects. Now we don't have the balance that's always the most desirable card. And the Ewer is just kind of gone because it honestly doesn't have a purpose anymore in the game, assuming that Lucid Dreaming is as effective as I'm kind of hoping that it is. But yeah, that's all you had to do. It was just, you cut down the cards. 4 cards. I would have been happy with 4 cards with different effects. You have 3 effects for DPS, and then you have the bowl for just damage mitigation, which, in all honesty, people wouldn't want the bowl most of the time. I mean, it would be helpful, but I feel like most people would still want the damaging effects. But that's what redraw is for. Redraw was there in case you wanted a different card, which means that if you only had the bowl, the arrow, the spear, and the reworked spire, which now affects direct hit rate, then if you happen to get the bowl, you'd be guaranteed to get a DPSing card if you used redraw. And there you go. Then that'd be so much better. It'd be so much better because then there'd be each card would have certain DPS in which it would synergize the best with, right? You'd have the arrow, which black mages would really like, samurais would really like, Gunbreaker would probably really like it too, casters in general would like it as well because it opens up more opportunities for mobility, I imagine. The spear would work really well on the monk and the bard, as it always has been. And then direct hit would work well on just about any DPS, really. I mean, most DPS really like direct hit rate as it is. So it's like, yeah, that's all you had to do. That's all you had to do. Just get rid of the balance. The balance is the problem. Okay, the balance was always the problem. Get rid of the balance, and all of a sudden, Astrologian is fun, and you don't have to worry about having to pull the balance all the time because it's not in the game anymore. And then you just have those 3 specialized attacking cards, and then the 1 defensive card, and then you just have 4 cards, and it works. It's perfectly fine. I feel like that would have been so much of a better change than what we ended up getting, and I'm so upset about just Astrologian turning into, like I said, just everything's the balance, and now it's just hoping and praying that you get the seals that you need. And it turns Astrologian from a tactician, which is what I really liked Astrologian for, was the feeling of it being a tactician, which, you getting a card and making the best out of what you get with it. Do you use the card immediately? Do you, siphon it into Royal Road to make your next card better? Do you save it for later, put it in your spread slot? If you get the arrow, do you give it to your black mage, or do you try again for like something else? If you get the spear, give it to your bard or your monk. Everyone can benefit from the balance, which is why everyone wanted it. So if you just got rid of the balance and then reworked the spire, or just get rid of the spire because everyone just hates the spire anyway, and rework the balance. The point being, just having 4 cards, 1 for direct hit rate, 1 for crit rate, 1 for attack speed, and then having 1 defensive card, which would be the bowl, which is extremely underrated right now, honestly, which it won't matter because it's going to be gone anyway. It's just going to turn into a mini balance for ranged DPS. It's just, I don't know. This was not the right approach. in my opinion, to take with Astrologian, because it really just waters down the card system into something that isn't as interesting to interact with anymore. It's not. One of my favorite parts of Astrologian was your interaction with the cards, and now that's just been completely gutted and watered down. And this is actually the change I hate the most among all the healers. It's not the completely gutting of actual DPS, like, spells and abilities across all three healers, even though that is disappointing in its own right. It's this on Astrologian. As someone who stuck with Astrologian back when it was shitty as hell, I went and unlocked Astrologian first thing when Heavenward's drop, went through Heavensward on Astrologian with the reduced cure potencies and all of that, and I've been sticking with Astrologian when they buffed the crap out of it for no reason and gave 20% balances and arrows and all of that crap, which they totally didn't need. I've been with Astrologian for so long, and I've had a lot of fun with Astrologian, and now I'm not going to have that fun with Astrologian anymore. I'm not. Essentially, all it boils down to is just giving out extra damage to people, and that's it. Just, that's boring. It's not fun. You don't have to think about it that much at all. I mean, it'll take a little bit of getting used to kind of memorize what each card, which seal each card grants, but yeah, once you memorize that, it really just boils down to, do I give it to a melee DPS or do I give it to a ranged DPS? And that's it. That's all it is. And if you happen to have a party composition that only has melee DPS or only has ranged DPS, then you're shit out of luck. Now you're just giving worse balances out to everyone. So yeah, I don't know. I don't like these changes for Astrologian at all. And for me, this is probably the most disappointing change out of the healers, and honestly the most disappointing change out of everything we've seen coming out of Shadowbringers changes out of the North America Media Tour, in my opinion. And I don't know. I know there's gonna be some people who don't agree with me. I think that I think people are just gonna be completely fine with just getting just flat DPS increases, even if it's less. But like I said, for everyone who isn't playing the Astrologian, they're going to be totally okay with it, because bonus DPS is bonus DPS, right? But for people who are actually playing Astrologian, it's not going to be as fun. It's not. I will be hard pressed to find an Astrologian who actually is having significantly more fun with it in Shadowbringers than they would have playing it as it is now in Stormblood. I would be. Like, you're not going to reach those highs anymore of just kind of, like, how awesome is it when you get your expanded Royal Road effect, you get your balance, you throw it up, you do time dilation on your Black Mage or your Samurai, whoever's doing the most DPS, and then you pop your Lucid, you pop your Light Speed, and then you go and you pop Celestial Opposition, and all of a sudden everybody has, like, balances, and you have all these awesome buffs. You get an MP regen, MP recast, all that stuff. That's not in the game anymore. It's not. You can't do that anymore. That insane combo is gone. That the high of, like, the height of getting awesome RNG is gone. With kind of the homogenization of all the cards, there's no low points and there's no high points. It's just, oh, I got this card, I'll give it to you. That's it. Better make sure I gave it to the melee DPS, or better make sure I gave it to the ranged DPS, depending on what you draw. And that's all it comes down to. Gone is any of the complexity in the cards. Yeah. And like I said, there's no reason to not use a card anymore either, because you can't Royal Road them anymore. You can't spread them and save them for later, which I'm actually kind of surprised that you can't do that, because that would have its own uses in particular. Yeah, that's all you can do is use it, channel it into Minor Arcana to use a slightly stronger version if you don't need the seals anymore, or undraw it, which there's no point to doing that, which I'm not even sure why undraw is even in the game anymore, honestly. But yeah, most disappointing change. I really wish, I probably should have started with Astrologian or put Astrologian as second so we didn't end off on a low note. But yeah, that is my personal opinion. I don't like the changes to Astrologian's cards at all, and I am definitely not going to have as much fun as Astrologian as I have been in Heavensward or Stormblood. So yeah, that's really unfortunate. I mean, fingers crossed that come 6.0 they might rework the cards in the way I suggested it, which was bring back all of that complexity, bring back Royal Road, bring back spread, bring back sleeve draw, and even the old Lord and Lady of the Crowns back to their old states, and then just cut two of the cards and then make it so that one increases attack speed, one increases crit rate, and one increases direct hit rate, and then have one defensive card. Keep the bowl the same, basically. And I think that would be so much better. It'd be so much better. Then each card would have its purpose. I feel like the bowl still would be the less desirable card, but it would still have its place. And even if you did get the bowl, that's what redraw is for. If you want strictly DPSing options, that is what redraw is for. But it's too late for that. We have to wait another 2 years to see what changes they might make to Ashelosion in 6.0, assuming that we're still following the 2-year cycle per expansion. But yeah, kind of sucks that we kind of ended on a low note there with my disappointment with the card changes to Ashelosion. But we made it. That's me talking about the changes to all three healers that came out of the North America Media Tour that happened like 3 weeks ago, and I'm just now covering now because I am lazy and I procrastinate. But yeah, that's what this video has been. So those are my thoughts on the healers. I mean, I'm not expecting everybody to agree with everything that I said, so don't feel like you need to. I'm sure there's going to be people who are completely fine, and maybe even people who are totally happy with the changes to Ashelosion in particular. I know that I was fairly optimistic about Scholar when there's quite a few people who are pretty disappointed in Scholar, and I feel like my feelings on White Mage are just kind of meh. I mean, I'm still going to enjoy White Mage because I enjoy White Mage as it is in Stormblood right now, and it's just more of that, just with less DPS options, I guess. So yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts. White Mage, meh. Ashelosion, kind of cool. Healing toolkit and utility toolkit, really cool. Cards, extremely disappointed. And then Scholar, fairly optimistic about its healing and damage mitigation toolkit, but disappointed in the gutting and Dps spells all across the board on all three healers, obviously. But maybe that's a signal that we're going to be focusing more on healing in Shadowbringers content, that outgoing damage is going to increase a bit, that we're going to be spending a lot more time healing. One can hope, since we are in fact healers, but at the same time it's like we've spent so long with how healers are currently that I feel like even if they kind of move towards that direction, they're not going to get it right the first time. So that it's still going to feel pretty underwhelming, I feel like, playing a healer with our DPS capabilities that we kind of have available. But it's worth keeping in mind that that these were changes from an earlier build of the game, and that with all of the cat, what are you doing? Come on, what are you doing, cat? My cat's messing around. But with all of the feedback that the community's been giving, and probably some of the feedback that people who went to the actual media tour gave, there's a good chance that some changes might be coming to the game before early access launches, and even after earlier access launches. They kind of spend the first few weeks before the Savage Rage drops, kind of tweaking things here and there before Savage ends up dropping a month after official launch. So expect there to still be changes coming in early access, and even in the first like 4 weeks of the game's launch across the board. So if there's something that you don't like or some suggestion you'd like to make, then it's not a bad time to make your voice heard. Post on the forums, do something, just let the devs know, and if they think that is an appropriate change, they might actually change it. So I mean, they're not going to change the cards. That is a way too major of a change for them to kind of go back on now. But some smaller things, there's a possibility that they'll change things. Like Celestial Opposition, in my opinion, is kind of underwhelming, and I would like to see that changed in some way so that it's a lot more satisfying to use. That's a change that I feel like is something within the realm that they could possibly take feedback on and tweak so that it's not it feels a bit more satisfying to use. So yeah, smaller things like that can expect changes possibly with the right amount of feedback, and if the devs feel that it is a necessary change. But I've spent almost 2 hours talking about 3 different jobs, so my voice is going out, and I am totally ready to take a rest and go make myself some dinner. So thank you all for listening. Those were my thoughts on the 3 healers, bearing in mind that these changes might be slightly different when we get our hands on the actual game and early access, which is not too far away from when I'm recording this. 12 days, not too far away. Really looking forward to it. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. I'm going to leave a link to this article on Gamer Escape in the description of the video in case you want to check it out on your own time. You can also check out the rest of the jobs in case you haven't already looked at all that information or watched videos about it, because I am like 3 weeks late to all this information posting about it anyway. But yeah, that'll be in the description in case you want to check it out on your own time. But yeah, thank you for listening. Feel free to hang out in the streams. I'll be doing some streams leading up to early access, and probably be streaming during early access as well. So be looking forward to that if you want to come hang out and join the chat and just have fun. We've been having a pretty fun time just kind of chilling with some Shadowbringers prep. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that I finally have the opportunity to stream and that people are interested in watching me stream. It's very humbling, I think, that people enjoy my content. So thank you to you guys. Thumbs up to you. And I'm going to go now. So thank you all for listening. And feel free to let me know your own feedback and thoughts on the changes to the healers or any of the jobs if you'd like. Please go easy on me if you disagree with my opinions. I mean, we all have our own opinions and thoughts on things, so just be respectful. That's all I ask for if you have a differing opinion. So yeah, that's all I got for this video. Thank you all for listening. See you in a different one. Sayonara. Bye bye.